Stefan Blackmore. I am Cats Protection's Advocacy and Campaigns Manager, and I am joined today by Dylan Nijkamp,
the Campaigns and Advocacy Officer, Cats Protection.
Yes, who technically started in this role on the 1st of May, so this is an intense induction programme that we take new starters through. But no, Dylan has been our Assistant Advocacy Officer for some time before that, and has done a lot of work on engaging networks, particularly the political email tool that we're going to be talking about a bit. So the CAT Manifesto is our general election campaign, essentially. So we've heard some excellent examples yesterday as well about the work people are doing through the general election. Still, though, we wanted to have a little bit of a reminder of the background for everyone. I'm sure we've all been through lots of meetings and discussions in the run-up to the election and planning, when's it going to be, and so forth. Well, for us, we always planned to launch our CAT, or I say the CAT Manifesto, very important, is the definitive CAT Manifesto, during the general election, and perhaps against perceived wisdom, we were launching a fairly lengthy, very lengthy policy document during the election. And now, of course, within this document, we have lots of specific policy asks, so the point was to be able to pull them out, highlight them. But with the fun of the CAT Manifesto, the idea was to cut through and say, look, we have something authoritative here that we're going to be talking about and engage our supporters with, as well as candidates. So key part of the strategy with this, which we won't cover in too much more detail, but was being ready early, making sure that when we launch this, there is, of course, a lot of noise in elections, as we've spoken about, making sure that during the campaign, we would go relatively quickly and make sure this document was out. And anyone in relatively big organisations know that moving things quickly can be a challenge. So a huge part of this was internal discussions, making sure we were ready to go, ready to launch, and making sure things like our campaign pages were ready as early as we could possibly get them. And actually this one, with our pages, we'd made sure they were well optimised, thanks to the wonderful Glyn Thomas, who is here somewhere, I'm sure, and will be speaking at a session later. He had made sure our pages were ready and primed to go. So they were all built and ready to go out and support the CAT Manifesto. So, of course, as I say, we were all very prepared. I don't think any of us were quite ready for poor Rishi in the rain, very rapidly announcing the election. So still, despite all that preparation, we were having to draft copy very quickly that we knew what we were going to say, but there were still some late nights. And I think having worked in elections, that sort of was set within me that, yes, it's an election, I'm going to stay up late and I'm going to write loads of copy and we're going to be printing stuff, which didn't need to print anything. But it was all that mindset. We were back, we were quickly running, we wanted to be ready to go as soon as possible. And we had a whole strategy around engaging supporters and getting them engaged. But we did have a challenge with that. Well, I'd say a challenge. These were two great successes. Actually, we'd won two big campaigns that happened to come into force essentially during the election. So the second one there, pet abduction bill, big campaign we'd run to make sure that cats were not excluded from a new law on pet theft, because the proposal was that they were going to be. That came in the last day of Parliament, essentially. So it was suddenly we'd had this campaign when we needed to communicate that to supporters. Great news, but just more making the comms slightly more complicated, but more so cat microchipping becoming compulsory. Brilliant news, campaign we'd worked on for years, but of course there was huge comms plans around that. It fell right in the middle of the election when this would become compulsory. So essentially, in terms of that internal discussion, making sure everyone was aligned, we knew there was pretty much 2 weeks solid comms on microchipping, which is great, and of course ways to try and convert it. But the reality with this law change is we'd campaigned for a change in a law that directly impacted our supporters, put a requirement on them to microchip their cat at the risk of a fine. So obviously all of that comms went out, and it needed to be focused on that as much as we tried to transition things to say, hey, we've changed the law, let's do it again, let's back the campaign. There was a long period where we sort of had to focus on that quite rightly, which meant we didn't quite get where we wanted to with supporter engagement on this because we lost so much time on it. But it obviously was great to be able to get that law through. Now, what were our objectives on this campaign? What are we aiming to do? Why are we engaging supporters to contact candidates? Well, we wanted to establish cats protection as a definitive stakeholder in animal welfare. Too often cats have been excluded from changes in the law, and we really wanted to up where we were as an organisation. We wanted to identify and engage that parliamentary supporter base early. For us, we didn't have a big team or a huge amount of capacity to engage candidates ahead of the election, so particularly with those bills and those law changes that we were focused on. So this was very much our chance to get in front of new candidates. We also wanted to, of course, make sure the salience of those key policy points, pulling out those top issues from the CAP manifesto, making sure that they were in front of politicians. And you're probably thinking, well, you're telling us that's what we're all trying to do. Well, we did have one slightly different objective, which was to gather political cat photos. I'd highly recommend it if it's not in your KPIs. It's a good one to have. I mean, not formally an objective, but it sort of happens. And with this campaign, the thinking was very much, let's lean into this, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But the strategy behind this, how we were going to achieve that, and I won't cover too much on the supporter side. We're going to focus on our candidate-focused side because there's some brilliant organisations that are talking about their supporter strategies that have much better data integration and things ready to go than us. But with our supporters, the approach was very much recognising, and always at the back of my mind on this, is when we talk about our supporters, we don't actually own them. And from the other side, I know those people who have campaign tags, who've written to MPs and candidates about campaign issues, are actually on multiple databases. Some of them have hundreds of tags. They all send letters for every organisation. So just bearing that in mind, that their inboxes were all going to be very busy. And getting an email about cats was going to be perhaps not what they were expecting. And again, we lent into that. We went slightly tongue-in-cheek. I did have a moment of crisis when I had an email subject line, what does the general election mean for cats? Ready to go. And I think I spoke to my email marketing team, said, can I really send this? And they said, yes, actually. You know what? My mum asked me this. What does the election mean for cats? I said, well, fine, let's do it. And it went well. Yeah, I think it got through. We got through the serious points while recognising that an email about cats was perhaps unexpected. And of course, as I've already mentioned, getting out there early, engaging early, and for us, making sure that we had that chain that we would go through, update them on these law changes as they came in, as well as bringing them back to say, right, let's take action, we've changed the law, let's do it again. And generally that did work very well. We got supporters engaged. We had positive responses from them to this, and a lot of them taking actions. I think we had 8,000 in the end, which was, I think we worked out 30,000 emails were sent to candidates about cats. So with the candidates, with that in mind, the fact they were getting emails about cats, we did want to explain to them, of course, yes, that there are important issues, and everyone gets there are important issues, but we had to use that transition that this was perhaps not what they were expecting. So we're going to jump into that candidate side a little bit more in depth. So I'm going to pass over to Dylan for the first part of that.
So the political email tool within the Engaging Networks platform allowed us to send a direct email to all candidates in the database from our own email address. This meant that we established a direct contact with candidates where we could introduce cats as a political topic and form a link between our advocacy team and future MPs. The fact that we started with an email from our team also meant that for those that didn't engage with us straight away and then were kind of bombarded with emails about cats, did have a point of contact to come back to when they realised it was worth engaging with us. More generally, the political email tool has been really useful to us in maintaining that contact with MPs following the election. The CAP Manifesto campaign was the first time that we'd used it, but its success and ease of use means that since then we've used it for briefings, event invites. We've also used databases of regional and even local politicians. So when we were distributing microchipping best practice guidelines to local authorities, we were able to let them know about the requirements following our successful campaign to make cat microchipping compulsory in England. So there were 3 ways that candidates could engage with the campaign, and these options were highlighted both in our direct email contact and the subsequent action where supporters could email their candidates. First, candidates could take a pledge action on an Engaging Networks page, and unlike the pages we use to get members of the public to take action, we knew that candidates would likely want the ability to take a bit more of a detailed look at the policy aims that they might be associated with. But still, we kept the pledge itself as a low bar ask. So candidates were simply pledging to speak up for cats rather than needing to endorse any of those specific policy positions. Alternatively, candidates could respond directly to us via email or to local voters. And this was useful for candidates who were cautious about signing up to a pledge, such as for internal party reasons, about supporting external campaigns. But there were a lot of them that still wanted to show some kind of support for the campaign. And yeah, within 4 minutes of sending that direct email ourselves, we had a supportive response, and then our inbox was just full of cat photos for the rest of the campaign. And then finally, there was a social share option daisy-chained onto this page for the most enthusiastic MPs, so that they could make their support for cats a bit more of a public part of at least their online campaign. And I'll hand over to Stefan now for a bit more detail on that social media aspect.
Yes, thank you. So this was our approach was very much thinking about the dynamic. Where does your email land? When you send an email to target, what's the dynamic of where that email is going? Now, I've spoken last two conferences about within an MP's office, what's happening in that process. Within a general election, you've got a slightly different environment. You often have a candidate. They will be in the constituency all the time. They will be in an office, a busy office environment, lots of late nights, getting things ready and so forth. So there's all this discussion going on. And so very much at the back of our mind was, well, how do we make sure that this is mentioned in that environment? And that's where that sort of slightly softer approach that we had, where we'd go in and, as Dylan mentioned, cat photos. If we talk about cats, there is a likelihood someone in that office has a cat or likes cats, and it's going to be mentioned because it's slightly novel that we've mentioned it. And so very much centre to all of it was, if you support the campaign, please do consider sharing your cat photos throughout the campaign, because they're seeing cats on the doorstep. Naturally, there's canvassing cats out there. This is all happening anyway. Trying to bring it in and talk about this campaign was very much part of the approach. And you'll see that we actually have a screenshot from Engaging Networks 2024, where we mentioned and welcomed that you could share cats on the app, and you did it for 2 days. So it very much actually going back, and whereas I think we're seen as quite a serious part of the organisation, we're talking about cats being shot with air guns, cats being overbred, the lack of breeding regulations, talking to the rest of the organisation, go, yeah, but still what happens is when I talk to an MP about cats, if they have a cat, that phone comes out of the pocket and I'm seeing that photo very quickly. So leaning into that, saying, share your cat photos, and a lot of that came through email. A lot of them, a decent number, were sharing on social media as well. And we did have pre-made assets as well. We very much took that approach, like where we talk about daisy chaining actions for supporters with the pledge page, daisy chain it on, add on the action, say, oh, do you want to share it as well? And trying to get that additional engagement from candidates. So what was the actual impact of this? The outcome, sorry, I'm 2 slides ahead. We got a quote there from Caroline Noakes. It's the sort of thing we were looking out for, where you may not be able to see it, but we spotted this during it, that Caroline Noakes had mentioned on a Facebook post, I think, that the single biggest point of agreement from all candidates at their local hustings was that Cats Protection had run the most effective email lobby so far. And we were very pleased with that, obviously, but also that was the point, to get that cut through, to get those discussions outside of just that environment. And we'll come more onto the impact in a bit, but just first of all, what was the direct response from that? So back over to Dylan.
Thank you. So 651 candidates responded in support, and as expected, candidates from smaller parties did seem a little freer to take supportive action. But these statistics demonstrate that we aren't simply seeing fringe parties getting involved and expressing support. 115 candidates were elected and became MPs. The Greens and Lib Dems had around half of their parliamentary party support the manifesto, which is particularly impressive when we consider the election success that the Liberal Democrats had. And additionally, that's around a third of the SNP MPs showing support. These MPs included significant party figures, so the co-leader of the Greens and the deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats expressed support. And what's very positive is that 64 MPs of the governing Labour Party also supported the campaign. So this is and will continue to be vital in our ability to influence policy throughout the Parliament. Looking at the data on which of the 3 ways candidates engaged highlights how valuable having different options can be. As expected, the higher bar ask of a social media share was taken a little less often, but as Stefan covered, those were particularly valuable to us in identifying the most enthusiastic MPs. And I should also note there that those statistics are actually just for X. That was easiest to monitor. We kept an eye on other social media platforms, but for the sake of the statistics, that's just Twitter. So depending on the party, it wasn't always the case that emailing in support was a lower bar than signing a pledge. This was the case for the Conservative, Labour and Reform candidates, that emailing was more popular. But for the Greens, SNP and Liberal Democrats, the trend was different. Many pledged without actually emailing. The graph on the right of the screen, showing elected MPs, might draw us to trying to conclude something along the lines that candidates with an actual chance of winning are more likely to be cautious and only email rather than sign a pledge. But again, we have to look at the differences in the parties to get to the real story. Labour's election success and likelihood of their candidates emailing rather than signing the pledge meant that amongst those who were elected, the email action was more popular. But a Lib Dem, Green and SNP candidate who successfully becomes an MP was still more likely to have signed the pledge than emailed in support. So a key learning that we can extract from the data here is that options are really important in these kind of cases. A low bar for a candidate or MP of one party and in one context might not necessarily be the lowest bar for an individual involved in another party. And I'll hand back to Stefan now for a bit more detail on the impact of the campaign.
Thanks. And I can see Austin threatening me with his big 1 minute left sign, but there are 5 minutes of cat photos, Austin, so sorry. So yeah, what was the impact? And when we're talking impact here, I think probably more we're on sort of this direct impact on us going in to influence Parliament post-election rather than overall impact, as much as hopefully we will get those law changes through. So one surprise we did have direct contact with policy advisors quite quickly after this campaign. We didn't expect that. That was not a bar we'd even set for ourselves, but suddenly there was this talk of, oh wow, cat policy. Which was really positive and we've been able to utilise since, and I won't go too much into detail in that. The other thing that we were really pleased with and has come up with MPs coming up to talk to us at events afterwards is we had that cut through in the social networks that we know we cannot monitor in any way. The all-powerful WhatsApp group was mentioned to us that this was all over it. So that was really nice to hear that this was discussed within those formats. I suspect some of it was, why are we getting emails about cats? But we can then bridge to the right topics. So we were quite happy with that. And that has translated to many, many actions in Parliament, 150 actions, including lots of questions on our key policy issues since this campaign, which we were really set up, ready to go. Lots of discussions, lots of attendance and events that's really been up. So it's really put us in that position where we're ready to shift over to that more insider influencing as well. So we were really set up the public affairs team more ready for this. And the last couple of things on that, APCO Cats, our all-party group on cats, we managed to re-establish, which anyone who's worked on all-party groups know there was a lot of rule changes around. So we were not sure that was going to be re-established, but given the numbers that had contacted us, we were very quickly able to re-establish that. And we'll come to Joanna Baxter in a minute, who is the chair of the group, because I'm going to have to share some cat photos. I feel I've got nothing at the moment, Austin, I'm sorry. But lastly, just in terms of the policy, cat breeding is on the agenda, our big #1 policy ask we're focused on, being asked about all the time. We had a big report advising it to come out just before the end of the year last year, and so that is on the agenda. These things are slow, of course, but we're in a really good place, and that's why we're very pleased with it. And lastly, yes, cat photos, while we're probably really invited. So yeah, am I allowed to share some cat photos? Are you going to stop me now? No? Okay. So yeah, just a couple of nice cat photos here from Chris Murray MP, who we were really pleased with this one because it's quite early on and it showed the exact thing we were aiming for. This was actually a video, one of the few videos we got. He was out canvassing, he saw a cat was stroking it, his campaign team started filming him and said, do you know, we've had a lot of emails saying, will you speak up for cats? And they capture and go, yes, I have seen those, and I will respond to them all, but let me tell you, I do love cats. And it was just that nice human aspect to it as well that we managed to cut through. We also had Chris Blore posting some lovely photos of his cats, Socks and Hamilton. Sadly, I think Socks has passed away, but they were lovely cats to see posted on social media during the election. We had Facebook, as Dylan mentioned, was harder to monitor. We think there was a lot more going on there than we could see. But we had people like Wendy Chamberlain posting. We had them using the assets that we provided as well in cases. Chris Philp, cats out canvassing. Adrian Ramsey, who I think posted quite a few times his cat photo once we'd given him the license to do so, which was nice. And Right, these ones. So we haven't got cat photos on these ones, but the first bottom one, very nice, just to say the cut through about the campaign. The top one, does anyone remember Big Brother 2006, Celebrity Big Brother? No. Well, brace yourselves, and I know a lot of you are too young, Dylan, we've discussed this, how horrifically young you were. Weird mindset we had to go through sending this email is, we're going to send an email to George Galloway saying, will you speak up for cats? Actually, it turns out he never released his email, so one of the few that wasn't on the database, so didn't get it. But we did have this response from another Workers' Party GB candidate that said, as a member of a party whose leader used to be one, what else could I do? And there may be some younger members of the audience who don't know what that's referring to, so brace yourselves, or just shield your eyes if you know. But yes, George Galloway did indeed pretend to be a cat on 2006 Celebrity Big Brother. And one of the weird discussions we had to have. Lastly, Joanna Bax was already mentioned, all-party group of cats chair now, absolutely won for number of cats posted during the campaign. This is a video she produced the eve of polling day of all the cats that she had seen during the election. So, of course, fantastic advocate for cats protection and cats in general. So with that, we are well over time, but thank you very much for listening to us. If you have any questions or, as I said, just want to post cat photos in the app, but on that, actually, I was approached yesterday. Last year, we did not run a cat competition. I want to be very clear. I did not choose someone's cat to win. It was random, and if you have complaints that your cat didn't win, you need to complain to Austin, because that was raised with me yesterday.
Thank you both. That was really great. Love looking at pictures of cats. Of course, I have my own cat at home. Shout out to Murphy. He's a great cat. We are already a few minutes over, so I'm going to pick one question. And if it's not your question, I apologize, but please find these guys afterwards. I'm sure they would love to talk to you. So, to what extent do you think the campaign was aided by the fact that cat welfare is not as divisive as other causes? You know, you guys have adorable cats behind your cause, so I think,
it's an easy sell, I guess.
How can we relate this to other charities?
Well, that's it. And so I probably should have said that. I mean, my thinking with that is, more broadly, what is your USP? What is it that is going to get you attention? There's lots of other people campaigning. What is it that when that email lands is referred to, why would that be discussed over any other topic? And so that was really what it was. And we've not gone into the softer side. It was much more a conscious approach to, let's just use it. Let's not fight against it. Let's not try and just say, what are you going to do about this cat that's been shot with an air gun? Yes, raise those issues, but use that sort of slightly softer approach. Now the divisive thing's interesting because also this is a very niche policy area where there was probably a lot of concern about signing up to any specific pledges. So that was more what we had to overcome. But certainly there are things that are disagreed with around animal welfare. There is kickback that we shouldn't be talking about cats. That's not a serious policy issue. So I think that's more where we have the challenge. But 100% appreciate cats are a nice, easy thing to share, ask people to share photos of.
All right, thank you very much. Round of applause for this guy.